Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom. I'm the creator of rulingplanets.com and Christopher Renstrom Astrology, and I want to welcome you to my July horoscope forecast for 2024. July begins with a step backward, much like the zodiac sign that it's affiliated with, the zodiac sign Cancer, the crab. On July 2nd, Neptune, the planet of dreams, illusions, and visions, will be turning retrograde in the sky. Now, when we talk about Neptune, when we talk about its visionary enchantment, its visionary appeal, I want you to think of a wave breaking on the shore. It spreads in all directions as far as it can go. But when Neptune turns retrograde, it's like that water gathering back into itself again. It leaves bubbly foam here and there, but the bulk of the water has been pulled back into the ocean to form another wave. In essence, that's the way that a Neptune retrograde works. You may feel like your hopes and your aspirations, your vision for the way that things are going to come together, is beginning to recede backwards. It's beginning to regress. It doesn't have that forward momentum that you've been enjoying in recent weeks. And you may feel like maybe I've made the wrong decision. Maybe I made an ill-advised choice. Maybe I was following an hallucination. I was telling myself a myth or a lie, or I was perhaps even deluded. No, you aren't any of those things. But a retrograde planet does take back the energy that it once gave you in your push forward. It takes it back into itself. And when it does this, it sort of acts as a kind of test. And the test that you may be encountering with Neptune turning retrograde is a test of the convictions that you have in your hopes, in your aspirations, and in your dreams. These are forces in our life that are really quite powerful. We put a lot of stock in the way that we see things working out for ourselves. We put a lot of stock in our vision of the way that we want the future to be. But there's always a part of us. There's always a part of us that's afraid that maybe we're being too gullible. Maybe we're being too foolish. Maybe we're in love with our dreams and we're living some kind of fantasy life. If today's stumbling block is all it takes, and what I mean by stumbling block is if today's disappointment, if today's disillusionment, if today's feeling that you backed the wrong horse, if that's all it takes to discourage your spirits and to derail plans, then your vision perhaps wasn't really that strong to begin with. And maybe you are better off abandoning it or leaving it by the side of the road. But if this drawback, if this setback, if this becomes the very thing that inspires you to brainstorm, to test drive different approaches to bridging the gap between imagination and reality, if it's the sort of thing that gets you to explore an alternative route, to imagine a different way of doing things, then Neptune's retrograde is doing its job. Neptune's retrograde is testing you about your belief and faith in your dream, in your vision of the way of things coming together, but it's also testing you in terms of your creativity. This isn't about resolve. This isn't about redoubling your efforts. This is about you staying true to your vision, you staying true to your hopes and aspirations. And if you do that during this period of time that Neptune is retrograde, then you will discover that visualization is the key to realization, something that you will see for yourself when Neptune comes out of retrograde in December. Signs most affected are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. On July 3rd, Mercury forms an opposition to Pluto. Never underestimate the power of grace under pressure. In a cacophonous world of acrimony and division, it's often the refined and poised individual who stands out as trustworthy. There's something about quietly maintaining your position or affably agreeing to disagree that expresses authority It expresses centeredness. You may feel challenged on every front, as Mercury in Leo forms an opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. But if you draw upon the strength of your character and clarity of your insight, if you are centered, truly centered in yourself, then you may see critics begin to warm to your perspective. You may not build a bridge right away, but at least you will have opened the lines of communication. Signs most affected are Gemini, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. On July 5th, there will be a new moon in Cancer. Honoring your roots is a good idea when there's a new moon in Cancer. You may want to research your family history, visit a favorite childhood spot, or spend time with an older relative. It may feel like you're indulging some nostalgic whim, but these dips into the pool of our memory can refresh and restore us when we're feeling parched and dry. Each of us is a link in a chain to the past, which means that each of us has a duty to pass down the things that have been passed down for generations. The new moon in Cancer serves as a reminder that treasures lie in trivial things, and that objects that appear commonplace now will be seen as precious in the future. Signs most affected are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. On July 8th, Mercury will form a wonderful sextile to Jupiter. You'll be surprised by how effortlessly things fall into place today. It can be anything from running into the very person that you've been looking for, to finding what you've been searching for on eBay or Etsy, to being bumped up in line thanks to a last-minute cancellation. Mercury, the planet of the guide, has always had a sixth sense for ins and outs and loopholes. And what happens when it forms a sextile to Jupiter is that these actually wind up leading somewhere. Needless to say, this is also a good time for buying and selling. Not only will you strike a great deal, you may even walk away with a handsome profit. The signs most affected are Gemini, Leo, and Sagittarius. On July 10th, the Sun will form a trine to Saturn. Sometimes it's the very thing that we're avoiding that winds up becoming the key to our salvation. This is especially true during those times when the Sun forms a trine to Saturn. That's because Saturn has an ironic sense of humor. It's during its trine to the Sun that we are forced to face the music, that we are forced to take responsibility for a botched bit of business or a postponed endeavor. But there's more going on here than the stars teaching us all a lesson in accountability. Now that you're being forced to grapple with the situation that you've been avoiding, a situation that you've been putting off, a situation that you were convinced was too impossible for you to deal with, what you're going to discover during this Sun-Saturn trine is that it's a lot more manageable than you originally thought. In fact, it's so manageable that you'll wonder why you wasted so much time and energy dragging your feet in the first place. The signs most affected will be Cancer, Leo, Scorpio, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. On July 11th, Venus enters Leo. This is spectacular news for romantics everywhere, and that's because Venus is at her most resplendent when she's traveling through the zodiac sign of the Lion. Love saves the day, literally. From July 11th until August 4th, you will see all of your darkest fears, noxious anxieties, nagging neuroses dissolve in the light of day. That's because Venus has zero tolerance for anything that takes the fun out of love. Instead, broken hearts will be mended, chivalrous acts will be rewarded, and even the most jaded of misanthropes will find good reason to give romance another try. Signs most affected will be Taurus, Cancer, Leo, and Libra. On July 12th, Venus will form an opposition to Pluto. Are you playing games with somebody's heart? Is that somebody playing games with yours? These are the questions worth asking when Venus, named after the Roman goddess of love and beauty, forms an opposition to Pluto, named after the lord of the underworld. Here in an opposition, we have Venus on one side and we have Pluto on the other, and they are sitting on a seesaw. Seesaws are not balances. Seesaws go up and down. And as seesaws go up and down, there's always this feeling that one person is in the ascendancy and the other is in the descendancy. The problem is that each of you thinks that the other one's the one who's being difficult, that the other one wants all the power, wants all of the control, which is why there is so much withholding, testing, and manipulating that's going on between the two of you. During this time that Venus and Pluto are opposite one another, you're going to have to find a way to come clean with one another, or end the relationship altogether, because this constant up and down on the seesaw is bringing out the worst in both of you. Signs most affected are Taurus, Cancer, Leo, Libra, Scorpio, and Aquarius. On July 13th, there will be a first quarter moon in the zodiac sign of Libra. There are certain rituals, there are certain protocols that would be wise to follow during this first quarter moon in Libra. Back in the day, if you spoke contemptuously of a god in his temple, or let's say you chopped down all the trees in a goddess's sacred grove, you could expect that there would be hell to pay. Now, it might not happen right away, but it would show up eventually, and in the most telling way. The ancient world was very attentive to showing the proper respect, and what goes for deities goes for people. Nowadays, you may be tempted to snub authority, to throw shade, or to tell someone who's being really annoying to talk to the hand. But I would advise you to rethink it, especially with the first quarter moon under the auspices of the zodiac sign of Libra. You don't want to do anything to offend anyone, because it may not seem like much right now, but it's bound to snake around and bite you in the derriere later. Signs most affected are Gemini, Cancer, and Libra. On July 15th, Mars forms a conjunction to Uranus. Walls collapse, supports buckle, and long-standing structures are leveled when Mars forms a conjunction to Uranus. Now, whether this is good or bad all depends on what you think of the life you have built for yourself. Security is a funny thing. On one hand, it's a refuge that we run to during a time of crisis. It's reassuring to know that there's a job to protect us, a partner to turn to, or a rainy day fund to draw on in a time of need. However, what provides security can also become a prison if we're not mindful. A thankless job can turn us into a wage slave. The price of upkeep for a relationship can be unbearable. Or the money saved becomes more important to us than living the life that we're meant to live. Concerns like these are often swept under the rug as we check off the items of our day-to-day to-do lists, which is why it takes something like a Mars-Uranus conjunction to rattle us, to grab our attention. It's vital that you ask yourself during this time what you are fighting for exactly. Are you fighting to hold on to something that feels secure? Or are you fighting to be free of it? Signs most affected are Aries, Taurus, Cancer, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Mars enters Gemini on July 20th, turning up the heat on any low-burning disagreement, smoldering rivalry, or half-forgotten feud. Now, you may think that you'll get along with everyone you meet when Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini. Mars in Gemini will swiftly disabuse you of that notion, especially when tensions flare up with loved ones and friends. And this will be more than just a case of people being oversensitive. You're going to hear a lot about past slights and repressed resentments, which is why you're going to want to handle people's tempers gingerly. It's also why you're going to want to choose your words carefully, because anything you say will be taken out of context and used against you. It may prove so bewildering at times that you could swear that somehow you've been transported to some mirror universe where people look the same but act totally opposite. And that might not be the worst way of approaching situations until you have a fuller grasp of what's going on. Mars will be in Gemini until September 4th. That means 6.5 weeks of quibbles, squabbles, and squawks. The signs most affected are Aries, Gemini, Virgo, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Pisces. On July 21st, Mars will form a trine to Pluto. And this is a good thing, because you have the planet of will forming a trine to the planet of power, which means that you will be able to target and go after the things that you want to do. That makes perfect sense, except these two planets are in zodiac signs that are associated with the element of air. Mars is in Gemini, and Pluto is in Aquarius. What that means is you have to get the cooperation of the people around you in order to accomplish your goal, or to seize a prize. Air trine energy is good for coaxing, cajoling, and persuading, but make sure that you're not twisting somebody's arm. Make sure that you're not forcing them to make a decision before they feel ready. Air sign energy is always sensitive to other people and their needs and desires as well as your own. That's why whenever we're dealing with Gemini and Aquarius, like we are in this trine, cooperation and coordination is key. So if you work with the person to bring them on board with your aims, if you sell them on your plan, if you get them to see that your idea is a really good idea and will benefit them as much as you, then you will be successful with this Mars-Pluto trine. However, if you play with their heads or fool with your hearts, it will only come back to bite you in the derriere, because Pluto has a very strong affiliation with karma. Remember that Pluto was named after the Roman god of the dead. It was Pluto's job to judge who was good and who was bad, to separate the wheat from the chaff. When we are dealing with a trine like this, everyone needs to benefit from it. You need to share the spoils of your victory. You need to share the spoils of your triumph so that everyone who cooperated in this venture is happy with the result. Do this, and you will avoid sowing the seeds of future resentment. Signs most affected are Aries, Gemini, Scorpio, and Aquarius. On July 22nd, the Sun enters Leo, the zodiac sign of the Good Father, for a 4-week stay. So what does Good Father mean nowadays? Well, simply put, it means a parent who shows up. Even if you're not a Leo, you'll find yourself in situations where people are counting on you for support, where people need your approval or are desperate for some kind of direction in their life. We all want someone to look up to. We all want someone to be the bigger person, or to take us aside and to explain why bad things happen when they do. You may not see yourself as being up to this challenge, but let me assure you, you are. Speak from the heart, lead by example, and you can't go wrong. Signs most affected: Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. On July 23rd, the Sun in Leo forms an opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. In this opposition, you're either going to be on the side of the Sun, the side of Pluto, or someone in between who's trying to get the two sides to see reason. An opposition between planets is, in my opinion, the most difficult of all the astrological aspects. The reason it's so difficult is because the planetary energies are polarized. They're in opposite camps, just like our US Congress, and they're not going to do anything to help the other one out. Now, the sun is taking the side of individuality. Okay. It's going to take the side of wanting to be recognized, wanting to be respected, and wanting to be heard. The sun is the ruling planet of Leo, and so there can be a sort of sovereignty to the sun. Sometimes it can get a little bit like I'm an exception to the rule, but what it's going to stand for is individuality, its own individuality, and the individuality of other people, that each person is special, that each person is unique, that each person needs to do what is true to who they are. This is very much a sun in Leo position. Pluto in Aquarius is the exact opposite, where the sun is standing up for me and the way that I see things, and I want to be recognized and I want to be respected. Pluto, on the opposite end, is standing up for everyone else. Pluto in Aquarius believes that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So something that's going to put Pluto on the defensiveness is when someone starts to get high and mighty, when someone starts to talk about how special they are and that they demand respect and that everyone, bend the knee in some sort of regard. So Pluto in Aquarius is going to take the perspective that whatever is being proposed needs to satisfy the criteria of everyone who is involved. And Pluto in Aquarius, we have to remember that Pluto in Aquarius is a fixed sign. So Aquarius isn't going to budge any more than Leo is going to budge. Now, Pluto in Aquarius isn't going to speak from the heart. Pluto in Aquarius isn't going to draw upon their personal experience. Pluto in Aquarius can come across as being a bit impersonal. It's going to talk about stats and facts. It's going to take a more scientific view of matters. And it's doing this in order to do the most good for the most people. A side that comes out with Pluto in Aquarius that isn't always available for people with strong Pluto in Aquarius to understand is, well, if you have to break a few eggs in order to make an omelet, that's what you do in order to produce the omelet. So the Pluto in Aquarius isn't going to recognize anything as being special or unique. It's going to insist that the rules be obeyed, that protocol be observed, and that everyone benefit from what is on the table. And so this opposition here, because of its fixity, can also become absolutist. You either have to side with individuality over the masses or masses over individuality. You have to choose one of these sides. Now, there may be some of you who are experiencing this in your life as being the third party. In other words, you're watching two people completely disagree with one another and they're being absolutely absolutist about it. And you're trying to offer some sort of advice or guidance or talk them down off the ledge, or maybe ask them to revisit the situation at a later time. And I imagine if you're trying to do this, you're meeting with scowls or you're being ignored as the two sides yell at one another and re-entrench in their positions. So this kind of an opposition can be a breaking point. And that's why I regard oppositions as being the most difficult aspect in astrology, because there is such a gap between the two sides, and there is such a refusal to cooperate or to budge in any way that you often see things break or snap during periods of time like this. Or you may be in that third position where you can see that this relationship or association isn't going to work because there's an absolute refusal. These two sides aren't going to relent on anything. So if there is a breakup or an ending during this opposition, that would be in keeping with the aspect. If you're trying to finesse it, if you're trying to work with the energy in a more constructive way, you have to find a way to get out of the argument, okay? To remove yourself from, this is my side, and I'm just going to listen to you argue with me until I can jump back in and reestablish what I have to say again. You have to get out of that argument position, and you have to make a very real and a very sincere effort to reach across the aisle. to find some kind of common ground. Even in sheer oppositions, there is the hope, there is the possibility of finding common ground. And if you don't want a relationship or an association to break up completely, then the sooner you find that common ground and offer that olive branch to the other side, and what that might be is some sort of incentive or invitation for the other side to also seek common ground. Remember, you're not resolving, you're not finding an answer, you're finding common ground, which means a new place to explore the conversation, to explore the dialogue, and hopefully to plant a seed for future discussions. Signs most affected are Cancer, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. On July 25th, Mercury enters the zodiac sign of Virgo. Mercury in Virgo is good. It's excellent for streamlining and editing. This will help you to identify what's important and to offload those commitments and obligations that are no longer relevant, that are no longer doing it for you. I don't know if you remember the Japanese celebrity Marie Kondo. I think she went by the title The Tidying Expert. Her KonMari method helped all of us organize our closets back in, I think it was like 2014. What made her such a sensation is that she related to people not wanting to throw things away, and she would come and enter a closet, and she would sort of identify the things in the closet, and she would start putting them into piles of keep and to pitch. Okay, you sort of had to make these two piles of what you would keep and what you would pitch. And then she would engage in these conversations with people as to why they were holding on to it, if they were ever going to wear this again. It's completely common sense, but she was so welcoming in the way that she did this. She was so respectful. She was so sympathetic to one not wanting to just throw away things, but at the same time wanting to honor organizing one's life, that she made it a kind of game. She made it a kind of wonderful puzzle. And this was really the key to her popularity. It was very participatory, so that she wasn't there sort of like, telling people what to do, but she was getting into the closet and asking them to examine these things and giving them time to sort of reminisce and say goodbye as they went and did these things. And this is pretty much what Mercury in Virgo will be doing as it travels through this zodiac sign over the next 2.5 weeks. You may be physically making two piles. One, keep this, pitch that. Maybe you're emotionally making two piles, keep this, pitch that. Or maybe you're mentally making two piles of what to hold on to and what to get rid of. But as you go through this process, and again, the trick is to make it very kind, to make it very friendly, to make it very welcoming, what you're also going to experience is a clearing out not only of your closet or closets, but it can be a clearing out of your mind and a clearing out of your heart. This Mercury in Virgo transit can help you to feel much better, both physically and psychically, because not only will it help you to clear up closet space, but it also clears up mental and emotional space as well. And you'll wind up feeling so much better as a result. Signs most affected are Taurus, Gemini, Virgo, and Capricorn. And finally, on July 27th, there will be a last quarter moon in the zodiac sign of Taurus. You may not be out of the woods yet financially, but at least you can see the forest for the trees, and that is an improvement. The last quarter moon in Taurus shows you making good on a debt, fulfilling an obligation, or repaying a favor. Now, it may just look like a plank in the platform, but it's solid. It's always wise to settle at least one account during a closing lunar square, because it shows that you're keeping your end of the bargain, and you can expect the stars to do the same in the next few days when you receive a credit, a reprieve, or a timely assist. Signs most affected are Taurus, Cancer, and Leo. If you enjoyed what you saw, please press the like button. It helps more than you know. If you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. I've had such a wonderful time visiting with you this week, and I can't wait to get together next time on Christopher Renstrom Astrology.